All right. So first, I actually want to talk a little bit about user interfaces in general. I mean, a lot of people talk about the final interface, like the interface that's so good that you're not going to think about a better interface. So I was just kind of thinking, like, is this the final interface? I mean, or how about this? Or maybe we're getting closer with this. I mean, this is a pretty good interface, I think. This is, of course, kind of the interface for us. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. So let me introduce myself properly. My name is Casper Fabricius, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Cimmerse. I've done web development for almost 2 decades, and I've done VR and AR development for the last 3 years. And I'm from Copenhagen, Denmark, and we're kind of known for being the world's happiest country with the world's highest taxes. I can't really explain that. All right, so I kind of realized some time ago that the internet was moving from 2D into 3D to really being all around us. And it was with that kind of general knowledge and excitement that I co-founded Cimmerse 2 years ago. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about that later, but first I just want to say a bit about how did I get there. And I mean, so this may have been the last time I was seen kind of out in the sunshine, away from the computer. Fast forward to 2015, where the Oculus Rift DK2 came out, and I became literally obsessed with VR. So I quit my job and started freelancing. And coming from this long web development background, I spotted this new library called AFrame that Mozilla has just released. And it's a JavaScript library, and it makes it super easy to use the 3JS web-based 3D engine to build VR experiences. And as an early paid gig, I built a retrospective experience for agile software development teams for the social VR platform, Allspace VR. Some of you may be familiar with that. They almost closed down, but then Microsoft acquired them, and now they're still out there. And while Allspace itself is a Unity app, it runs natively, they have this cool feature that you can actually embed web VR experiences right into the app, right into the social VR app. And you do that, they can do that for anything using 3JS. And since AFrame is using 3JS, you can also put AFrame stuff in there. And that's a thing you can definitely try and play around with if you want. I mean, I'm listing some of the technologies that I used for that project here. And the reason why I'm doing that is because if any of you guys are front-end developers, these should be very familiar technologies to you. React, Redux, Firebase. These are tools that we as front-end developers know and love. And the cool thing about WebXR is that we can continue to use these tools that we know and be super productive. So I continued to build AFrame solutions for a while, but then I met this guy who kind of shared my vision of an internet in 3 dimensions. I'm going to give you a second to read this complicated speech bubble here. So we started our company, Cimmerse, together. And we initially focused on bringing, I think I skipped the slide here, let's see. There we go. And there's a video there. If you could play that cue, that would be awesome. Oh, I think it skipped to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Oh. Let's see. Okay, so we initially focused on bringing art into virtual reality in super high quality using photogrammetry and, of course, web VR. And and this is like a little mixed reality capture that we did. The black painting in the background, that's a real painting, whereas the painting with the woman in the foreground, that's actually from virtual reality, and you may also be able to see a bit of a menu there. That's one thing we build all in WebVR. And again, the cool thing here is we could do it using a stack that's super familiar to front-end developers. In this case here, I also started adding some backend into it. I like Ruby on Rails, GraphQL, but again, since it's web-based, you can use whatever you like as a developer. So I wanted to also talk about some of the challenges around doing web-based VR, and I'll also come to AR later. We did this project for a client, and one of the challenges here was that there was a lot of transitions going on, kind of animations back and forth. And those of you familiar with a framework such as React may know that the way it handles state changes is basically it's kind of ripping DOM elements in and out of the DOM. And that's not very good if you want to do a nice transition. So there are workarounds for that. I can't really go into the details, but it's a good thing to be aware of if you decide to build AFrame solutions using AFrame React. You may run into to this challenge. AFrame works very nicely for static VR and AR experiences. And what I mean by that is something where you kind of load all your assets up front, and then you go into VR or AR. But in a lot of cases, you may want to load additional assets later, additional models, render new stuff, maybe even change the entire scene. And that is a bit of a challenge when you run in the browser because JavaScript runs on a single thread in the browser. So you have this problem of if you all of a sudden start introducing some heavy loading, some heavy rendering, it can lead to dropped frames, and that ends up being can be a quite unpleasant experience for the user in the end, leading to something like this. It's of course a mantra in VR developers. We have to be very aware of this. When it's web-based, it's even trickier to get right. But it's possible, and there are workarounds. You can offload some of this work to a web worker, which do actually allow you to do work on a separate thread. However, you still need in the end to render your 3D model into the 3ds experience, and that does kind of run on that single thread. So again, be aware of that if you're building web-based VR experiences. Now back to my story. What happened next was that Apple released ARKit and Google released AR Core shortly after. And I mean, all of a sudden we have all of these little nice rectangles supporting really good AR. And we kind of realized at Cimmerse that we could be on to something big if we added AR support to our platform. So we first used the Google AR build, the one that the guys before me were talking about. That was the first one to be out there and available, and it's still out there. And you can use that with, they have this free AR.js library that you use. If you want to use it with AFrame, there's a component called AFrame AR. And it's easy to get started, and it works fairly well with the features that the guys before me were also explaining. But it has the problem, at least a little while yet, that it only works in these two special built browsers that are not available in any of the app stores. So it's really like only for development purposes. That's why we were super excited when Mozilla released their AR browser into the iOS App Store. And I mean, here was finally something we could actually take to the customers and say, here's a browser with AR support. now we can start pushing this out there. I mean, and I'm sure Blair will also say that in his talk, they do stress that it's only for experimental purposes. Fair enough, but I mean, a startup is also an experiment, so we actually think there's a perfect fit there. So we refactored our AR solution into using the WebXR polyfill and work with the WebXR viewer. And we could still use the same basic stack again, staying in AFrame, staying in Three.js, allowed us to be flexible around experimenting with these different libraries that are coming out from Google and Mozilla and so on. Now we instead could use 3XR.js, AFrame XR, and the WebXR polyfill. And one of our customers, Muse, and I believe this is a video, so if you could play that would be awesome. Yeah, if we can, yep, there we go. Yeah, so one of our customers, Muse, is an e-commerce company selling framed poster art online, and they actually have our solution integrated straight into their website, and now we were able to also push out AR into that, and they would have that straight on their side, so people could press a button and start putting these products right on the walls on their own home. And this is something that's live, so you can go to muse.com yourself on your phone, and you can try it out if you want to see some web AR in practice. Now, one of the challenging things about working with web-based AR is that you only have access to a limited, oops, I think I'm one slide ahead. That's the slide I want. A limited subset of ARKit and of AR Core. So one example of something you don't really know when you're in the browser is how is the room initialization actually going? As you know, for all mobile experiences right now, you have this whole scanning thing going on before you can really start using it. It's the same when it's web-based. The problem is we don't really have as much information as you have in a native ARKit or AR Core app. So one workaround I can recommend for that is that you can do this hit testing, which the Google devs were also talking about. And what you know is, so while the initialization is still taking place, you will simply get no hits back. But as soon as you start getting your first hit back, then you kind of know that, okay, now the room is initialized. I can tell the user to start placing things in AR. So it's a little bit of a crude workaround, but it works. So, I mean, a great advantage of web-based AR and VR is, of course, that you have all the power of the browser available, right? The browser can do a lot of different things, and you can integrate with a lot of different solutions. So we started looking for a way to get AR experiences off the websites and into the real world. So we teamed up with Genie, which is a very powerful visual recognition engine, and it's super useful together with AR because it can kind of recognize images and videos from a distance, tricky angles, only partial, and as you could say, it's kind of breaking down the barriers between the real world and the augmented world. And that was like, I mean, and our favorite thing about that is that it also runs in the browser. They support fully web-based image recognition, and we put that together with our web-based AR. And I want to show you a little video where we recognize an outdoor poster for a movie you may have heard about, use that to trigger an AR experience in the browser. And here it goes past the video again. So if you can play the video with sound, please. You can just turn it up. So that's pretty cool, and it's running in the WebXR viewer from Mozilla. But since this is a tech talk, I'll also tell you a bit about the challenges of such an integration. So Apple has decided that you can only access the live feed from the camera in mobile Safari. If you're in Chrome or Firefox or the WebXR viewer on iOS, you can't get the live feed from the camera. So in this instance here, if you may have seen in the video, we actually had to start out in mobile Safari to do the image recognition and then switch over to the WebXR viewer. And this, of course, gives a more clunky experience, but it's also something that we're really looking forward to just going away when we have everything integrated into the real production browsers, and we hope sooner rather than later. So, I mean, why do AR and VR really need to be web-based? And I may hurt someone's feelings when I say this, but apps just aren't the solution to everything. I mean, it's actually really hard to get people to install apps. Maybe not for the biggest brands out there, but for everyone else, it's hard to get people to install an app, and it's even harder to get them to return and use that app later. And in particular, when you do shopping online, as we're focused on, I mean, consumers don't want to have to install an app from every single web shop that they visit just to see the product in AR. So that's why using something like web-based AR is what remove that barrier and make the AR experience instantly available, possibly converting the consumer into a buyer right there. Okay. I don't know what happened to my slides. Okay. The other side is fine. Okay. So I think I'm just going to skip a little bit ahead because I'm not doing too good on time here. But I wanted to quickly just give you guys an overview and where we are today. So virtual reality, web-based, we're doing pretty good. Firefox full support, Edge full support for Windows mixed reality, and Chrome on Windows also getting there behind an Origin trial token. On Android, we've had for a while we've had Daydream and Cardboard in Chrome, and we also have the Samsung Internet and the Oculus browsers for Gear VR. Not for Oculus Go yet for some reason, but I'm sure we'll get there. Augmented reality, we have the WebXR viewer. That's really a game changer when you work with web-based AR. But then also, as the Google Dev says, we're really looking forward to having this in Canary, and hopefully, my information is that it would be behind an Origin trial. I guess we'll see what the updates from Google are. And then, of course, we also have on Windows for augmented reality, we have Meta and HoloLens. However, it's still just dev kits, so from building a business around it, it's still a bit early, I'd say. Hopefully, I hope you're as excited as me about where all of this is going. I mean, augmented reality is no longer just for expensive enterprise headsets, but it's actually reaching the consumer. Mobile phones are the first step to that wide adoption, but as we're seeing here at AW and elsewhere, it's going fast towards more immersive AR experiences. Now, as creators of AR and VR experiences, we need to reach the consumers where they are today and where they are in the future. And that is in the browser. So come talk to me if you want to hear more. Thank you.